The story of Africa's colonization is one of unimaginable pain, unparalleled resilience, and an unyielding fight for freedom. For centuries, European powers carved up the continent, drawing arbitrary borders, exploiting its rich resources, and imposing their rule on its people. This systematic exploitation was not just about land. It was about erasing identities, suppressing cultures, and dismantling centuries-old systems of governance and trade that had flourished across Africa. The legacy of this dark chapter includes widespread crime, economic exploitation, developmental stagnation, and the staggering human toll of millions displaced or enslaved. From the transatlantic slave trade to forced labor under colonial rule, the human suffering was immense. Entire generations were lost to violence, and the effects rippled across communities, leaving lasting scars. These scars still mark the continent today, reflected in economic inequalities, political instabilities, and unresolved territorial disputes. But what if we told you there's another side to this story? A side that reflects Africa's ability to rise above its past, fueled by partnerships built not on dominance, but on mutual respect and shared goals. This isn't just about survival, it's about revival. Across the continent, new alliances are empowering nations to reclaim their narrative and take their rightful place on the global stage. Today, Africa's alliances stretch far beyond the shadows of its colonial past. From Russia to China and beyond, new players are stepping onto the stage, rewriting the narrative, and offering opportunities that could redefine the continent's future. These partnerships reflect a changing global order, where Africa is no longer seen merely as a resource provider, but as a key driver of innovation and growth. But are these partnerships truly different from those that came before? Or is this just history repeating itself, cloaked in modern promises of progress and development? The line between collaboration and exploitation is thin, and it's a question that African leaders and citizens alike are grappling with as they navigate this new era of diplomacy. To understand where Africa is heading, we must first revisit where it has been. The scramble for Africa in the late 19th century saw European powers dividing the continent among themselves at the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885. This division was done with no regard for the cultures, languages, or ethnic groups that had lived in harmony or conflict for centuries. The result was a continent fractured by artificial borders, setting the stage for conflicts and crises that persist even today. Colonial rulers extracted raw materials like gold, diamonds, and rubber, leaving little to no benefit for local populations. Infrastructure was built, but only to serve the colonial powers' economic interests. Education was limited, and governance systems were designed to suppress rather than empower. Generations were denied access to education and opportunities, leaving nations ill-prepared for independence when it finally arrived. This period created the conditions for poverty, inequality, and conflict that many African nations still grapple with today. Now, let's fast forward to a pivotal moment in Africa's history. 20 billion in African debts, wiped clean. That's not a fantasy. It's Russia's recent pledge to Africa. Unlike the exploitative relationships of the past, Russia claims to seek partnerships built on equality and respect. This act is not just financial, it's deeply symbolic. It signals a shift in how African nations are perceived, not as dependents, but as equals in a global community. Debt relief is more than a gesture of goodwill. It's about freeing African nations to invest in their own futures, building schools, hospitals, and sustainable industries. For countries burdened by debt, this move has the potential to redirect billions towards socioeconomic development. It's an opportunity to break cycles of dependency and focus on long-term growth. But the story doesn't start here. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union stood with African liberation movements, supplying weapons, training, and solidarity. From Algeria's fight for independence to supporting the African National Congress during apartheid, Moscow was viewed as a critical ally in Africa's fight against oppression. These alliances were rooted in shared struggles against imperialism, and they left a lasting impression. Yet the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 left these ties frayed. Russia turned inward to address its own challenges. It wasn't until the 2000s that Russia began to rebuild its presence in Africa. Its return marked a strategic pivot, with Moscow keenly aware of Africa's potential as a partner in trade, energy, and geopolitics. Today, it has forged military cooperation agreements with 43 African nations, emerging as a key arms supplier and diplomatic powerhouse. Russia is also investing in African agriculture, mining, and energy, creating new avenues for collaboration. This resurgence begs the question: is Russia a savior, offering a genuine partnership, or a silent strategist playing the long game? As the world watched Russia's moves, another power was quietly but steadily expanding its influence in Africa: China. Today, the footprint of Chinese investment is visible across the continent. The gleaming skyscrapers rising in Africa's capitals, the highways cutting through vast landscapes, and the digital networks connecting millions all bear the mark of Chinese involvement. This visible transformation speaks to the scale of China's ambition and Africa's potential. China's engagement with Africa dates back decades. In the mid-20th century, it supported liberation movements, providing resources and training. It also built one of Africa's most iconic infrastructure projects, the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, which connected landlocked Zambia to the Tanzanian coast, fostering regional trade. This project symbolized China's commitment to Africa, even during times of limited global influence. Fast forward to today, and China is Africa's largest trading partner, with trade volumes reaching $254 billion by 2021. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China has invested billions in African infrastructure, from railways and ports to energy and telecommunications. These projects aim to close Africa's infrastructure gap, creating pathways for trade and industrialization. But not everyone is celebrating. Critics argue that behind the glittering infrastructure lies a web of debt that could threaten the sovereignty of African nations. Will these investments pave the way for economic empowerment, or will they tighten Beijing's grip on the continent? These concerns highlight the fine line between partnership and dependency. Amid these shifting alliances, Africa's influence is growing within BRICS, a coalition of rising powers that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. South Africa joined the group in 2010, giving the continent a platform within this powerful bloc. BRICS represents a counterbalance to Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and World Bank, advocating for a more equitable global order. Now, Ethiopia and Egypt have joined BRICS, marking a new chapter for Africa on the world stage. Ethiopia's strategic location and growing economy make it a valuable player, while Egypt's expertise in trade, energy, and diplomacy add significant weight. Together, these nations amplify Africa's voice in shaping global policies. With BRICS advocating for a multipolar world order, Africa's participation could redefine global power dynamics. Africa is no longer just a continent shaped by external forces. It is becoming a force to be reckoned with. As partnerships with Russia, China, and BRICS deepen, Africa is poised to break free from the chains of its colonial past and chart its own destiny. Newfound resources and alliances present unprecedented opportunities for growth. From renewable energy projects to innovative tech hubs, the continent is rapidly transforming. Yet the road ahead is not without challenges. Questions remain. Will these partnerships truly uplift Africa, or will they come with hidden costs? One thing is certain, Africa's story is far from over. Its next chapter will be written not by external powers, but by its people, resilient, ambitious, and ready to lead. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history, resilience, and hope. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Together, let's witness Africa's rise.